We're not officially on yet, so hurry up. Carly's gonna poke her head in. I'll just say hello.
Hi, Carly.
Go away. We're up here, so we can sit out. Tony?
Yes.
Tony S. Did you lose your Gillette, or what's the deal here?
He's muted, so it's maybe better you don't get to hear his response.
Okay, we'll see when his contract's up. All right.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock and you are live on YouTube.
All right, with that, we'll call to order the June 29th, 2020 public hearing for the operating budgets of the Saginaw Township Community Schools. The first thing we need to do tonight is call the roll, and with Eric's absence, Janine is going to handle those responsibilities tonight.
Absolutely happy to. Mary Ann Bird, here. Janine Coughlin, present. Jan Collison.
Here.
Tony Duncan.
Here.
Eric Smith. David Jaffe.
Here.
Michael Colucci.
Here.
Janine, thanks for filling in with that tonight. The purpose of the public hearing this evening is for a presentation and discussion of a number of budget-related issues for both the 2019-2020 school year and the 2020-2021 school years. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Michael Walde for that presentation.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The presentation is very similar to the one I gave a couple weeks ago, but there are some definite changes. And just on the cover sheet here, we've got our 1920 budget amendment details. We've got our tax rate request, which is our L4029, and our 2021 budget adoption details. Next page, we'll just jump right into it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the amended of 1920, and we'll ask questions if need be. Then we'll go through the tax request and questions, and then we'll go through the adoption for 2021 and questions there, if that's okay with everybody. The first slide is the 1920 general budget snapshot, and there's our three columns: the preliminary budget, the revised budget, and our final budget. And
So I'm not seeing the slides right now. Are other people seeing it?
No.
You're not. So Jim, it looks like you flashed it up and then it went right away.
Yeah.
Give us 1 second, Mike.
You got into that before I got back from the other room.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. Give us 1 second.
Jim, we did see it come up like Tony had mentioned, so and then it went away.
There we
There
go.
we go.
There we go.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. Like I said, there's three columns: preliminary, our revised, and our final budget. There was some changes to our revenues and expenditures for our final budget, and our estimated shortfall of 153,190 will leave us roughly a 19.2% fund balance. And if we flip to the next slide, we'll get into the detail of what made up the changes in the numbers. After the revised budget, we started with a negative 239,656, and from the state aid status report, it showed a reduction in estimated local revenues, which is our property tax decrease of 130. Our state revenues increased, and that's due to finalizing the state aid and increases, decreases in some of the categoricals, and adding new categoricals for bilingual and summer reading programs. The federal revenues, there was a small adjustment there, $35,907, and that all had to do with the IDEA funding. Other revenues increased dramatically, and those were due to the ISD millage and the way the career complex is set up now. As far as we used to split the FTE for the students, and now we claim the full FTE. We pay we pay to Saginaw public schools, and then the ISD millage reimburses us for the cost of it. The other part of that is the Marshall Plan counselors that we have, and that pretty much makes up the 430 and 700. Increased expenditures, again, 243,000 of that 366 is in regards to the career complex and how it's being funded and expensed. It's basically an in and out now, so I had to increase the revenues and increase the expenditures. 213 was the first year that we were in the Marshall Plan. We had 2 counselors that were funded. We had community ed coverage. Typically, that's a very low number, if not the community ed contributing to us. But in this case, due to the COVID, there was severe revenue shortage in the community ed program, and that pretty much makes up the increase in expenditures. And the increased expenditures number would have been significantly higher, but we actually saw $300,000 in savings from the healthcare, roughly $119,000 between building and grounds and transportation. The bottom line is it comes in with a final budget for June 2020 of a loss of $153,190.
And Mike, that's
Yes.
With the information we know now, assuming no cut in state aid for the year that ends tomorrow.
Correct.
Okay.
That is a true statement. Okay, if we go to the next few slides, they're just the basic slides that we give you every year. The FTE blend, that comes directly from the state aid status report. There was very, very minimal change from the revised budget to the final budget. The foundation allowance, we stuck to the $8,111. There was lots of talk about that going down, but as we have seen nothing, so we left the budget alone as far as the foundation goes. And the next one is just the percentage of fund balance. So if all comes out, we'll have a 19.2 fund equity percent at the end of the year. And that should conclude the slides for the amended budget. Anybody have questions over any of that?
No.
Okay. The next slide is a picture of our L4029, which is our tax rate request that we give out to Saginaw County, Saginaw Township. And this is what they use to collect the taxes on our behalf. This form did not change the only changes on this form from last year to this year. All of the millage rates stayed the same. The only thing that changed is the taxable value went up from last year to this year. All the other numbers have stayed the same. And as far as the debt service goes, we use PFM and they advised us on what our debt rate should be, and they advised us to keep it the same this year as last year. And on this particular form, this is our 4029, and as quickly as we can, I'll need Mr. Jaffe's and Mr. Smith's signatures on this, and then I will forward that to the Saginaw County and Saginaw Township tax tribunal. Okay, that finishes the tax rate request section. And now we move on to the general fund budget snapshot for 2021, the preliminary budget. We are anticipating or projecting revenues to be just over 50 million and projected expenses to be just over 50 million and a projected surplus of 22,530. And that, if that stays as is, we would show a 19.1 fund equity at the end of the year. Okay, if you go to the next slide, we talk about the explanation and the changes in the budget. The first line, of course, is just the number from last year. If we did not change the budget at all, we would start with a 153,190 loss, but obviously we are changing that. The local revenues, we do not have a solid increase or decrease on those at this point in time. State revenues, we're showing a $243,000 increase, and that is based on our student estimate the estimate of our student count, and that's adding 30 students to our count. The federal revenues, we show going up 310,000, and that's money that is from the CARES Act that was passed in the springtime, and we could use it either last year or this year. We chose to roll it forward into this year with the anticipation of possible reduction in funding. Okay. Other revenues, this is a new item from my previous presentation. We're adding 18,000 under the other revenues, and that is due to the career complex millage actually had leftover monies, and they anticipate that being a recurring event. So they chose to pay for transportation of our students to the career complex. And when the numbers all were calculated out, they told us that we could assume an $18,000 reimbursement for our career complex students' transportation. Increased expenditures. This is the rest of the changes from last time to this time. Contractual increases. Last time they were about $408,000, and now they are $303,000, and that is due to the reduction in the increased expense was $105,000 that we saved due to a retiring teacher. I also had to reset the healthcare, which added $300,000, building and grounds $95,000, and transportation $24,000, because for my final budget of last year, we got to lower them because we weren't expending that money due to the COVID closure. So hopefully this year there will be no COVID closures, and that expenditure was increased back to normal. We also had a retirement rate increase, which is going to cost general fund roughly $100,000, and we hopefully will not have to cover any of the community ed, which is adding $228,000 back in. And the big picture from from 2 weeks ago to current is the ISD is covering our special ed supervisors. Originally, we were told that this would only happen if there was a proration. And in talking with Mr. Martin and the ISD, they said, no, that's happening no matter what. So that was an actual savings of $227,000. So when you add the previous presentation plus the changes that were made here, we actually went from a minus 322 to a positive 22 from 2 weeks ago till tonight. The next few slides again are.
Hey, Mike, before you go on,
Yep, go ahead.
do either you or Mr. Warren want to provide any more insight regarding the special ed supervisors and what was going on in terms of having the ISD cover those costs?
The ISD, back when the budget picture started looking as negative as the discussion was, the ISD started going department to department to see if there was a way for those departments to band together and save local districts. Their target goal was $100 per student. So for instance, if the state cuts us $800 a student, it would only impact Saginaw Township $700 per student because the ISD was going to find a way to cover that $100. That was their target goal. So they started working through their instructional services group. They have decided to pay a portion of our 5 literacy coaches at the elementary level, which doesn't result in a full savings to general fund, because a lot of those folks are paid out of Title I at risk and general fund, a combination. So it's not, it doesn't specifically hit the general funds altogether. The special ed department then decided, why don't we reach out and pay for these special ed supervisors in each of the local districts? So Shannon Hidman and Chantel Marsden are now being paid for salary, benefits, FICA, and retirement by the ISD for this next year. And then now they're working their way through transportation, operations, buildings, all their different departments of the ISD are trying to come up with ways to offset potential cuts for the locals. So that's why we weren't including it, because our understanding was, and it sounds like most of the districts' understanding was, those would only kick in if the state cuts us. And last week I reached out to Kathy Stewart, and she said, no, they're planning on doing that regardless of whether there's a cut or not. So that was extremely helpful, and we're hoping to hear even a few more things from the ISD as they work through their departments, but every little bit counts.
So that sounds like a 1-year thing rather than an ongoing change.
Right now they're committing to 1 year. They said they would like to make that continue moving forward, but they can only commit to 1 year at this time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, now if we advance, the slides, we've got, like I said, our basic slides that we show every year. With FTE blend, we're showing the 30 student increase estimate. Foundation allowance, we are anticipating, or we are budgeting for a no change there, because at this point in time, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that.
If you don't mind, sorry, Mike and Bruce,
yeah.
I guess when you say at this time, can you share with me some of your thoughts around moving forward? I've made a commitment not to watch a lot of news lately because it's kind of bumming me out. So I'm curious your thoughts, how the calls went that you had, that kind of thing.
Well, if I can mention, last Thursday, I believe the House and Senate Republicans in Michigan proposed a $800 increase. And that was to help offset some of the COVID-related expenses. Right. And they plan to use that, the billions, what was the figure? I think $1 billion that they received from the federal government that they have not distributed yet under the CARES Act. And so the Republicans are proposing to distribute that to districts on a per pupil basis of $800 increase. So whether that happens or not, I know it's getting a lot of traction. It aligns pretty well with Gretchen Whitmer's proposal to increase funding to school districts. I think that obviously there's a lot of political motivation to that. So whether the Democrats get on board with that and if it goes anywhere, but so now you're looking at anywhere from a negative $650 to a plus $800. But then there's conversation of, are they going to cut us $800 for next year and then use that $800 increase from the CARES Act to backfill it, which takes us to a net zero. So again, three different scenarios, all with widely varying impacts on our district budget.
We probably don't want to get too much into the detail, but that proposal had a lot of specifics. Is it your general sense that those specifics are such that we could massage our budget so it balances out?
Yes, I think there's enough wiggle room in there that we can cover some expenses that we're anticipating anyway, and free up that money to cover some of the deficits in some other areas. So we want it to be, we understand some of the COVID restrictions, but we don't want it to be so restricted that we can't use it where it's necessary.
Thank you.
Okay, and the final two slides on as far as the adoption budget goes, fund balance percentage, we would drop from 19.2 to 19.1. And the last slide is the MIPSR's defined benefit rate. That shows the rate going up from 27.5 to 28.21.
I was just
the next. Go ahead.
Well, I was just reflecting on what a huge cost. I mean, so the total cost of MIPSR's is 30% of our. Is this like a percentage of our employee payroll? Yes. So for every dollar made, or for every $100, we are also contributing $28.21 to MIPSR's. And this is essentially for all our employees. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll have to clarify that. The ones that are not on the defined contribution rate, because after okay. Yeah. So this is the most basic rate. There's a couple percentages higher, a couple percentages lower, but this is the basic rate. So that's what everybody uses as far as budgeting goes. You know, this is just for the future. It might be really interesting if you put a dollar number for each year on there, just so we get us, it gives us a sense of how big, how many dollars are going into this. Oh, absolutely. I'll make a little note there. That should not be too hard to do, because I should be able to pull that off the system. Yep. Now that I've said that out loud. Yeah, it's just to help get across the impact of what a big portion of our budget this is. Sorry, still writing. Okay, yes, I will look into that. The next slide should be our debt retirement slide. And again, this is where we're repaying our debt that occurred, I believe it was 2008. And the millage rate stayed the same. The projected revenue went up slightly because property taxes went up. Projected expenses, and we're projecting a $66,000 surplus in the debt retirement for this year, which will raise the fund balance from $459 to $526. The next slide is the sinking fund budget.
Same thing there. Millage rate stays the same. Last year we had, I believe, $1.28 million, and this year we have 1.308, and that's just simply due to the property tax increase, and we anticipate spending all that we have. And the last slide will be the nutritional services budget. Go
Quick
ahead. Nope.
clarification. It's
Yep, go ahead.
it's a property value increase, correct? Not a property tax increase.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. Thank
It's
you for that
important distinction.
clarification.
No, tax rates
Yes.
didn't increase, it's property values.
Correct. I'm sorry. Yes, the property values increased. Thank you. Nutritional services budget. I get this right from Wendy Hort, and she predicts a $57,000 shortfall this year, and it'll take her fund equity from 928 to 870.
And Michael, does that revenue reflect the
It does
300?
not reflect any increase. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun there. That does not reflect any increase in the meals that she was talking about before. I'm not sure if that was your question. I'm sorry.
Now, and I'm sorry, I as that came out, this is 2021. I was wondering if the revenue was counted for the lunches that we gave away, but this is not the correct budget, so I apologize.
Correct. No. Nope, that goes into last year.
Yes, I apologize.
Is the projected fund balance as of June 30th, 2020, 767,000? Because the slides that were attached to board book says the projected fund balance is 928,000.
And 870.
I wonder if those had the
Oh, you're talking about the additional slides? I'm sorry.
No, the nutritional services budget, this slide, as it appeared for the board to review on board book, had the projected fund balance at the end of June of 2020 at $928,263.
Right.
Now you've got it at
Correct.
767.
then yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did I not have the sheet that I'm looking at has a June 30, 2020 of 928,263, and do I have the wrong one in the slides?
Yeah.
It's just a different number. The projected revenue and expenses and suspected shortfall are all the same.
Okay. Yeah, I must have copied the wrong slide into the presentation.
So the projected at the end of this year is 928,263, and then
Correct.
tracked out 57,824 to give us the expected.
870,439. Yes.
Okay.
And I will fix that when I'm back in the office. I will fix that slide just so I have it corrected. Or I'll put the correct slide in the presentation, I guess is what I mean to say.
Okay. Mike, any additional comments from you before we invite audience comments or board comments?
No, not at this time. I just want to thank you all for going through it with me.
Well, and I want to take a minute to acknowledge your incredibly hard work along with the rest of the administration, putting together, a revised final budget for this year and a proposed budget for next year. This is your first time having done it in our district. The number of unknowns are incredible, and the amount of time that you and others put into this, and you in particular, you deserve a huge clap of appreciation because you did great work here. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, at this time, let me just see. It doesn't appear that there are any audience comments. So either no one's watching or the community fully supports your efforts. And at this time, I'll invite the board, if the board has any comments to add.
So deficit at the end of 1920 and minute surplus 2021, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Oh my goodness.
Marianne is very happy, Michael.
Under currently known facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, just ask.
Just,
Should I put an asterisk there?
No,
Under currently known-
Might be useful.
all right, with that, we will adjourn the public hearing for operating budgets and give it about a minute, and we'll start our regular meeting. All right, we'll get started with the regular meeting of the Saginaw Township Community Schools for June 29th, 2020. And I would ask for roll call, please.
Indeed, Janine Coughlin, present. Jan Collison,
Here.
Tony Duncan,
Here.
Eric Smith, David Jaffe,
Here.
Michael Clucci,
Here.
Marion Bird, here.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Clucci,
Yes.
Marion Bird,
Yes.
and Janine Coughlin, yes.
We have 3 sets of minutes to adopt tonight, all from our June 15th series of meetings, the committee of the whole, the special meeting, and the closed meeting. I believe we can take them all together because the same participants, we were all at all the meetings. So if there's a motion to adopt all of those minutes.
I make a motion to adopt the committee of the whole meeting from June 15th. The special meeting on June 15th to 2020. And what was the other one?
The closed
Close
meeting.
me.
Oh, the closed meeting on June 15th from 2020.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Clucci,
Yes.
Marion Bird,
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison.
Yes.
All right, next is our treasurer's report. Mary Ann.
I move that the Saginaw Township Board of Education approve the total checks, transfers, and wires as presented in the amount of $5,179,085.24. This amount covers invoices paid from May 14, 2020 through June 23rd, 2020, and the May 2020 payroll-related taxes, ACH transfers for benefits, ACH reimbursement payments, and sales tax.
Support.
Any discussion?
Mhm.
Okay, roll call, please.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Clucci,
Yes.
Marion Bird,
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
Okay, do we have any committee reports this evening?
Nope.
Okay, then I'll ask Mr. Martin to lead us through the superintendent's report. Bruce, you're muted.
I'm trying to be so careful so I don't have feedback or anything, and then it catches me.
Oh, there you are.
Go to my agenda. There we go. First up is our regular board meetings, dates, times, and locations. You'll see that we added the August 10th committee of the whole meeting. There will be one meeting in July and one meeting in December. And I submit that to you for approval.
Is there a motion to approve the schedule?
I move that the Board of Education approve the attached board meeting dates for 2020/2021 year.
Support. July 20th, yes, and December 4th.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Michael Clucci,
Yes.
Marion Bird, yes. Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes.
Did you get that? Oops.
All right, next up is our annual resolution to join the Michigan High School Athletic Association. Justin Thorrington, Athletic Director, is recommending this again this year. And on the forms, we've updated our enrollment figures, which of course is a requirement. And so I submit that to you for approval.
Is there a motion? Janine?
I move that the Board of Education adopt the attached membership resolution for the Michigan High School Athletic Association.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Marianne Bird?
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison?
Yes.
Tony Duncan?
Yes.
David Jaffe?
Yes.
Michael Calucci?
Yes.
Next up is simply an informational item. If you would please pencil in your calendars, or actually with ink pen if you prefer. We are scheduled for a board retreat. Mrs. Dorr has ironed out the details. It will be on Friday, July 17th. We're planning on doing lunch at 12 o'clock and then have a retreat from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock roughly, depending on how much time we need. It will be held out at Baines. Thank you, Mrs. Coughlin, for agreeing to host us.
Indeed.
Our two items of main items on the agenda are to discuss the continuation of learning plan, or I suppose we're calling it the return to learn plan now for the fall. We will have quite a bit of preliminary work done by then. As you know, the governor is releasing her guidance tomorrow. And then we have approximately 1 month to work on that and massage it and turning it into something for Saginaw Township. Our goal, our countywide goal, is to release our plan to all of our families and our communities on July 31st. And much of the framework for the plan will look similar across the 12 districts, with enough fine tuning and personalization each district based on the given circumstances. The second portion of our retreat would be to take a look at our budget for the new year. You approved one, or you will be approving one in a few minutes, hopefully. And of course, there are all kinds of rumors out there, as we mentioned earlier, everything from additions to neutral to cuts. And we'd like to have a conversation and get your input on what the board priorities should be when it comes to what kinds of things we should fund and what kinds of things we should stay away from if we need to do any kind of reductions. And that will be the scope of our work for that day, barring any unexpected additions that may arise. So we will get that posted appropriately, as that would be considered a public meeting based on the membership.
In past years, I know that when we've had the luncheon, we've included some specific staff members. Are we going to do that again or not?
It's my recommendation that we do for portions of that, because there are a few people that I would like to have included in the budget discussion and in the continuation learning plan discussion. For instance, I'd like to have Jamie Kratz with us as we discuss the learning plan, and not to do a big presentation, but just to help answer questions and ask the right questions of the board members, I guess. And then Mr. Walde, when it comes to the discussion about the budget and what the priorities should be, that would be my recommendation. Of course, I'd like to have Mrs. Dorr there as our recording secretary. But ultimately, those three people are up to the board, depending on what your desire would be. But that would be my recommendation, given the scope of the conversation that day.
No, my thought was for the luncheon, like a welcome back type thing. That's what we've done that in the past.
With our administrators, you mean?
It was heads of the unions. Not at the retreat, but there was but we did have a back to school, and then they left, and then we went into the retreat. Nobody here was on the board at the time, I don't believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have to ask you to share more information on that with me, and we can talk
Okay.
about that later.
Do we have any limitations on the size of the indoor gathering?
You know, if we feel that we're gonna have people, then I'll move it here to the store and we'll have it in the cafe area. So depending on kind of input, if we feel people are coming, I can adjust quickly.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we should keep it to only people that are necessary to be there. So, you know, people Bruce is recommending, but we don't need people there for that day just to,
No, I'm just talking about the lunch. I'm not talking about the other part.
just to keep the number of interactions down.
Marianne, if you can share your recollection with Bruce about what's been happening in the past, and then I'll facilitate what we decide to do, whether we
Okay.
expand it for the lunch or maybe we do a similar sort of thing closer to the start of the school year.
Okay.
Bruce, anything else under your report?
No, sir.
Okay. Tony, do you want to lead us through the HR report? Or you want me to just go through the motions?
Take yourself off of mute, Tony.
Give us a thumbs up if you just want me to lead us through the motions. There we go. Okay, perfect. First, we've got the appointment of our proposed new heritage principal. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion. I move that the Board of Education employ Brian A. Blaine as the principal for Heritage High School beginning in the 2020-2021 school year. This appointment of two principals conditional until the district administration receives and verifies to its satisfaction all of the required information and qualifications pertaining to him.
Support?
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Oh, sorry, out of my game. Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison.
Yes.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes.
Michael Calucci.
Yes.
Marianne Bird.
Yes.
Congratulations to Mr. Blaine. I know as a board, we all look forward to working with him, and I know the administration's also excited to have him step into that role. So, Mr. Blaine, if you're watching tonight, congratulations and good luck.
Indeed.
Next is appointment of certificated staff. We have one approval, and that's Ashton Levon tonight. Is there a motion?
Go ahead, Mike.
I move that the Board of Education employ Ashton Levon as a teacher beginning with the 2020-2021 school year. The appointment of this teacher is conditional until the district administration receives and verifies to its satisfaction all of the required information and qualifications pertaining to her.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Jan Collison.
Yes.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes.
Michael Calucci.
Yes.
Marianne Bird.
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes.
And similarly, Ashton, if you're watching, we welcome you to Saginaw Township, although I know you have been with us in some different roles along the way. But on a permanent basis, we welcome you and wish you the best of luck as well as we move into the next school year. And then finally, we have ratification of the collective bargaining agreement with the Saginaw Township Administrators Association. We have a motion there?
I'll take this one. I move that the Board of Education ratify the extension of the collective bargaining agreement with the Saginaw Township Administrators Association through February 28th, 2021.
Support.
Discussion?
I guess my question is, if we were to face cuts for next year, does this in any way impede our ability to negotiate changes that might be necessary?
Tony shakes his head no, and that was my I had the same question, Michael, and that was the response I got as well, is that it does not, extends the status quo, but does not limit options if such options should be necessary.
Thank you.
Correct. That was agreed to by the head of the union.
And who, I'm sorry, who's the union now? Wasn't it Mike?
Mr. Jim Mitchell, who's watching us and managing our process tonight.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Calucci,
Yes.
Marion Byrd,
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes, Jan Collison.
Yes.
Okay, next is our business report. Mr. Wall, do you want to walk us through the different approvals? Or introduce them and I'll walk us through them?
The first one would be the adoption of the final 1920 amended budget that I just presented at the public hearing.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll do it. I move that the Board of Education adopt the general appropriation resolution dated June 29th, 2020 for the 2020-21 operating budgets.
Support.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Support.
This is we are adopting the older one first.
Correct.
This is the 1920.
Oh, she said 2021.
That's the way it's written.
It is, yeah,
But these are not correct.
the recommendation is off.
The title says adoption of the final 1920 budget, and then the copy is for 2021. So these
Right,
are
I see that now.
correct.
So you want to just amend your motion?
I'll just
Jen?
amend it. I move that the Board of Education adopt the general appropriation resolution dated June 29th, 2020 for the 2019 to 2020 operating budget.
Support.
Discussion? Good catch, Marianne.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Calucci,
Yes.
Marion Byrd,
No.
Janine Coughlin, yes, Jan Collison.
Yes.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
Mike, you want me to just follow through?
Yep.
You want to make
Yeah,
introduction?
you'll go ahead and just follow through.
Okay.
That way we're not pausing.
Okay, next is the approval of the 2020 tax rate request. We have a motion in the board packet for that. Mike?
I
Yeah.
move that the L-4029 tax rate request be approved and the total authorization be levied on July 1st, 2020 as follows. Extra voted, non-homestead, commercial, personal. Mike, should that just say commercial personal or should it just say, oh, not 6 mils? Extra voted, non-homestead, all other except commercial personal and industrial personal, 18 mils. Debt retirement, all taxable property, 2.9 mil. Sinking fund, all taxable property, 1 mil.
Support.
Discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Michael Calucci,
Yes.
Marion Byrd.
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes, Jan Collison.
Yes.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes. And the final budget-related motion to be made tonight is the adoption of the initial 2020-21 budget.
Take it.
Go for it.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the attached general appropriation resolution dated June 29th, 2020 for the 2020/21 operating budget.
Support.
Okay, discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Miriam Bird.
Yes.
She just said, take my fault, so she threw me off. That's why I'm saying. Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Calucci.
Yes.
And then finally tonight, we have a motion to approve copy and theme paper for at least a portion of the upcoming school year.
I'll take this one. I move that the Board of Education approve the Saginaw Intermediate REMC bid in the amount of $23,865.83 as the low bidder for half of the annual white copy paper order and the entire colored paper order for the district.
Support.
Discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Janine Coughlin, yes. Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Michael Calucci,
Yes.
Miriam Bird.
Yes.
Okay, I just looked and still no comments, public comments submitted, so we will move past that item. And on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support?
Roll call, please.
Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes?
Mike Calucci,
Yes.
Miriam Bird.
Yes.
Janine Coughlin, yes.
All right, thank you very much, everyone, for efficiently moving through all the budget numbers. The four of us on the policy committee are now going to sit for a policy committee meeting to go through two more sections of the proposed policies. Tony and Jan, you're welcome to observe and join in. But trust me when I tell you, it's better to let the excitement build and take it all at one time.
Thank you, Dave.
David, can I request 5 minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess and then reconvene. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
And David, from a recording standpoint, we want to be live and recorded on this next piece because right now we are live and recorded.
Jim, if Jim wants to turn us off, that's fine. We the next segment is going to be live and recorded because it is a quorum of the board, so it is going to be a public meeting.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Tony. Okay. And Mary Ann, you're going to take the lead tonight, right? You can just share. Okay. for our June 29, 2020 Board Policy Committee meeting. Tonight we're going through sections 1,000 and 2,000, and Mary Ann is going to lead us through that discussion.
Okay. Take a look up at the top. Series 1000 has to do with some pretty basics of the district policy overview, mission statement, and definitions. So if we want to cover this the way that we did last time, if there are any questions or comments over any of these sections, if people just want to go ahead and there are some sections obviously that for our information that have been blocked out to see what changes we might like to think about or at least discuss. So does anybody have anything on our general policy statement that you think he needs change?
The only thing that I have right off the bat is, do we have bylaws? It says the board will establish, maintain, and amend bylaws and policies. But do we have bylaws?
That's the 2000 section we're going to get to in a minute. For the
Those are
all the bylaws.
Oh, okay, there you go. Thank you.
Yep.
Bylaws, rules, and regs. So you want to turn to the next page, the mission statement. I have a tough time sometimes insert our mission statement here, so I would assume that that would be taken care of. The next would be creation, amendment, and posting of policies. Any thoughts there? Okay. Definitions. There's a blank for district. I don't know.
The Troon told us that we need to make sure we insert the district's official legal name that's on register with the state of Michigan. Sometimes, people put Saginaw Township, but it's really Saginaw Township Community Schools or things like that. So they said to call them to make sure we look up what the exact legal name is on file.
Okay. The next page has to do with description, purpose, and board organization and roles of the board and board members. The box there, the board will employ teachers through contracts which will be in writing and signed on behalf of the district by. He gave us a couple different options. I would think Board of Education
Option 1
would be what we would want to include there.
We don't generally sign teacher contracts. Those have been signed by.
Is that what? That's what I was thinking of taking action on. So
or employee teachers like we did this.
Like we did tonight.
We approve.
We approve.
Yeah, but
That's how I read it.
I think it would actually be option 3 or 4 is who signs them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, got it. Got it. All right.
Bruce, what's your preference?
I typically sign those after they've been approved by the board. They come in and fill out all their paperwork, and we both sign the contract at that point.
Okay, yeah, got it. That makes sense. The next one is adopt and oversee a budget option. The board will maintain an adequate funding reserves pursuant to policy 3202. Do we want to add that?
My inclination would not to be put it in here.
Okay.
Why constrain ourselves if we don't have to? I mean, we may want to, but if we don't have to, let's not put it in.
Okay. Anything else?
So 210110. I guess I was just noting that because I think this question came up at some time in the past year.
You mean the role of board members?
No, the number, the quorum question, and it says specifically that a quorum, majority vote of the members elected or appointed to and serving on the board. So it's independent of how many people are at a meeting.
You need at least 4 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just noted that. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and we probably don't have a choice would be my guess, is that's
Right.
probably the way the law. It seemed like some version of that came up as a question sometime in the past year. I just don't think it is.
Okay. Moving along to role of board members. I had marked number 1, having, I just think that's kind of an issue that goes along with training, especially for people who are new to the board. And in recent years, I'll just say, people have indicated, and I know people come up to board members and express an opinion, but I can remember seeing an email that, this is how this person responded. And that, my thought was early on in my training that I would listen, but that would not be my job to get back in touch with that individual who had the question, that I would relay that. I always let the board president know, and I always let the superintendent know, because I felt that would be his or her job. To have individual board members responding back to the public on issues, I don't personally feel that that's you talk about a chain of command. And so I always let the board president know. And then, like I said, I always let the superintendent know. And I think we're better served. And I think a lot of times people think, well, they want to respond and let people know that they're hearing them and listening to them. But then what ended up happening was the rest of the board never found out that this individual board member was going back and forth with the parent. And I think that just really puts us in a really bad place, because I think everybody deserves to know everything at the same time. And the superintendent at the time did not choose to share that information with everybody. So we were kind of blindsided when that parent actually came to a board meeting. So
That's more of a training thing?
yes, I think.
Marianne, you make a number of really good points. One question I had, so I would anticipate that with the return to learn plan, the budget issues, et cetera, there may be some media inquiries. How do individual board members react under this when asked for comments after a meeting? Or in particular, this is not just me this year, but any board president in future years. Is it allowable to, under this policy, to respond to those sorts of requests, or should the superintendent just speak for the district?
I think the superintendent should speak for the district. I think you want one common voice, because what I think might not be agreeable with what the rest of the board thinks. And I think you just run into a really difficult situation when you've got 7 people, and how do we have any idea what they've said? Now sometimes you can work in tandem with the board president, but when I have been contacted, I would indicate that I'm only one person, and your response is best for the information that you need. I would suggest that you contact the superintendent.
I think that this specific issue was addressed later on in this 200 section.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're expanding this particular thing, which is putting the emphasis on the fact that board members don't speak for the board.
Right. And I think that's always kind of a good reminder, perhaps a little retreat type. I know that we had done that in years past at other retreats long ago. Dr. Cease would have the roles of the board member type of thing. So, which gets us to, we're already in 2000. The district's legal name, we got that. School district boundaries. And then also the physical address, and then our mailing address. Any comments there, Bruce, or?
Nope. We'll get that taped in.
Okay. And then we have a student representation on the board. And the only thing that I could read with my old eyes was we typically have 2 people. So, and this just says 1. And I think that there had been I think that the students feel more comfortable with 2. And I know for a fact that that the students do meet with each other and discuss things. And so I think that there's a comfort level having two people. So that would be one area where I would hope that we could perhaps have two, and maybe this isn't the time, but at some point, I think we've tried to do it in the past, and sometimes it's taken off and sometimes not. Find a specific project for them, and with a new principal coming in, maybe there might be some things there, but because we've run the gamut of student board members being chastised by the superintendent for talking and bringing up issues, to students just being a repeat of announcements. And within the last couple of years, we've tried to get them working on projects, but I think I think they should be more than just a voice that says Mock Rock is going to be August 33rd or whatever it might be. So maybe that would be something that you, Bruce, could work out with David and perhaps Brian Blaine, so that that they have something to do.
I spoke with the attorney at Troon and gave them our situation of having two students. It said the high school students may select the student representative in a manner developed by the building principal and student council. Our situation is a little bit different. Kids are given a cover letter with all the expectations, and then they apply. They go through a little process, and the high school superintendent, or the high school principal rather, selects the representative. And then it says they'll serve a 1-year term. I said, we traditionally have done 2-year terms, and she said that's absolutely fine. It falls within the scope of the statute, and we'd be fine with that. So.
Okay.
David, you and I met, and you put together a pretty good summary of some of our thoughts about this. One of the biggest things I'm strongly in favor of changing is I think they should be done by the end of their first semester senior year. Student board member representatives are checked out second semester senior year, and I think we should just expect that, and we should be bringing the new ones. We should be appointing new ones in the mid-year, and that's when we bring other new board. That's when other new board members come on as well.
Oh,
So
I think that's a good
I strongly
idea.
recommend that we
Sorry.
I think that's a good idea.
What's that,
I
David?
think that's a good idea.
So I think the student rep program has got a lot of benefits, but I think as currently configured, it needs some tweaks. I had put together an outline of some possible tweaks, and Bruce and I had a short discussion about it about a week before COVID hit. So it wasn't the time that it sort of died there. One of the tweaks that was contemplated was having the students selected in the fall of junior year, serving from January 1st of their junior year to December 31st of their senior year. That way, they're a little more mature, perhaps, than someone who's starting at the beginning of their junior year. We eliminate the tail at the end where they're checked out. But that would, if we were to follow that format, it would basically mean having two student reps, both, if we wanted to continue with two, both starting on January 1st of their junior year, both concluding their service on December 31st of their senior year. So there wouldn't be that sort of junior rep and senior rep. There's pros and cons to that, but
I'd certainly be willing to give that a try.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a good idea.
We just have to then give them projects then that are doable within a 12-month period as opposed to a 2-year period.
Yeah,
And
I don't think the project stuff should be in the policies.
No.
But what we can have is, and I'm happy to share, I will email all of us tomorrow that thing I put together for Bruce. And we can certainly have that with Mr. Blaine to share with the students so they know in advance what's expected. If we have two students, then all we have to change is to allow for two, and then A2 would say the student representative may be selected in the fall of junior year and may serve a 1-year term beginning on January 1st of their junior year and ending on December 31st of their senior year. And now is actually a really good time to implement that because
Yep.
our reps understandably have been absent. So assuming we have in-person meetings in the fall, Lauren can continue for a semester, and then and Mr. Blaine can select 2 students. He's the one who will select them because he's now the principal, and they can start on January 1st.
I think that's a good idea. I like that.
And I'll circulate that document to everybody tomorrow.
Okey doke.
Great.
So that would still be a 1-year term then? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Simultaneous 1-year term.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really think 2 years is too long. I think it loses its uniqueness.
Well, I think your point's well taken that, it takes time in September getting back and things are new. And then like you said, somebody's probably taking maybe just a couple classes until they can graduate and they're done and they're gone by 1st of May. So, I think that's a good point. Okay, anything else on that?
No, I'm assuming Mary, you or Bruce got the language change for A2 there.
Yes.
Okay.
Then board powers, general powers. Nothing new.
There's a thing in here, 22.1 ABVII.
Yep, I saw the same thing.
Okay, it's about the parent guardian involvement plan. And it seems like the part we were talking about before, that was optional and we chose not to include it. Whereas here, it seems to be, it's expressly conferred power and it says the board will. So it's really a question for Troon there appears to be a disconnect between the policies in 2000 and the policies in whatever site 5,000 we went through before. Bruce, you look
Studying.
Befuddled.
No, I'm sorry. I just had a thing pop up saying Whitmer and GOP leaders agree on patch to 2020 budget. Sorry, and I was looking at it and it said they're including cuts to state aid for schools for the current budget year.
okay.
So I'm sorry. I'm trying to find what the number is that they're cutting the. Sorry.
Current 1920 or 2021?
Current 1920.
Yeah.
They're going to use federal coronavirus relief funds to lessen most of the state cuts enacted for schools. Of the 915 million in coronavirus relief funds, 512 million will go to schools to pay for COVID-19 related expenses, 53 million in hazard pay for teachers, 200 million to universities and community colleges, and 150 million to local governments. But it doesn't say what the cut. It says there will be cuts to, so that would essentially, and this was released at 7:11 p.m. That would essentially result in a proration, the way it sounds. But it doesn't. It gives some dollar figures in the millions and billions, but nothing on what the cut to school districts would be. I'm sorry.
So, I totally understand, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Got distracted.
So I'm sorry, you said 512 million is going to schools of the CARE Act.
Yeah, but it's such a mess because if they put that money into this year's budget and it's like, how do you use that to cover expenses that are already gone? Anyway.
Right. Right.
Well,
So
I'll be reading up on it tonight and tomorrow and reconvening to pass new budgets to supersede the ones we passed this evening.
Tomorrow, before July 1st.
So that vote might.
Right. Anyway, moving on.
I'm assuming Governor Whitmer was sitting watching our live stream and waited for us to adjourn and then hit the announcement button. So
I kind of think so too.
just to play with us.
Excuse me.
Bruce, the question is under B7, it says the board will adopt a parent guardian involvement plan. And in section 5,000, I think it was May. So the question for Truen is, can section 7 either be just taken out as something the board is required to do?
It's the very top of the page, the last
You're-
page, and that.
Says adopt the parent guardian.
You're at 2201, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's on the back side of that page. It's VII at the top.
Oh, adopt a parent guardian involvement plan, right? Which we're required to do because we're a Title I district, but it only goes to our Title I impacted buildings, our three buildings that are Title I.
Okay,
So it is mandated by state law.
Yeah, if you get Title I funds, you're required to have a Title I parent guardian involvement plan for those buildings.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
We
Sorry.
we don't need to have anything written in there then obviously about the Title I piece, since that's not clear.
Yeah.
I don't think so. We're
Okay.
required to adopt a plan and we've done that in the past, so
Okay.
I think we're okay.
The next item would be board powers, authority to enter into contracts, that type of thing. Any thoughts there? The next, which would be authority to establish curriculum. There are several there. Bruce, if you want to guide us through those on the second page of the curriculum items.
Okay, if 5420 is adopted, and that's the grade level sex ed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me go back to 5420 to remember. It seems like years ago.
I think we include L and omit M.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the next one's about our courses, core courses. Number 3.
Shoot.
It's if we exceed the standard.
Bruce, we just need to be consistent with the decisions we made last time there.
Yeah. I'm looking at my notes here.
Because
we selected option 2 that we have sex ed, reproductive health, and communicable disease instruction, and the board agreed with that. So 5420 was adopted, so we would include L. If 5710 is implemented, that would be we decided not to include that until it's mandated, so no on M. If the recommended core academic curriculum exceeds the state curriculum content standards, the heightened standards will be highlighted in the reasons for the recommended heightened standards. I believe we said no, we have the state's curriculum. I'll have to check on that one to make sure. And then if 5420 is adopted, which is the same as above, so we would include that down below number 3. That would be included. Goodness. So now I'm on number 4. If 5420 is adopted, yes, it is. And if 5420 is adopted, yes, it is.
Okay.
And then down in 3, financial literacy, we do not have a formal curriculum we teach in financial literacy.
okay, and we need to go back to number 3 of A.
3A3.
Okay.
You know, as Bruce Hendrick said, we were omitting that because we don't do that.
We use the state's adopted. Well, goodness, is there a, I'll have to look at that.
Well, this is simply saying that we're going to require the heightened curriculum standards to be highlighted. So I would just say no, we don't need that to be highlighted in our curriculum.
But that only kicks in if we exceed the state curriculum standards. And I don't believe we exceed the state standards. Like if the state.
So anyway, I would say we just don't need that section, period.
Right. I agree.
And you're under your BC, correct? That's what you're omitting?
2203, number 3. The recommended core academic curriculum standards
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
All right.
exceed the state curriculum content standards. Yeah.
So we're including L, omitting M, omitting 3. And then under B, including 3,
Correct.
including the 2 provisions in 4.
Correct.
And then we are omitting the financial literacy.
And I skipped the sign language.
Yeah, you
didn't
skip sign language.
I? Trying to remember what I don't believe we do that. I don't think we have we don't give high school credit in a foreign language for sign language class. I will look at that though and have a better answer for you.
Okay.
Okay, board member conduct, conflict of interest. The one example that I thought of, and I don't believe I was on the board, but was covering the board just before I got on the board, there was a board member who indicated that he was a bit weary of his sister-in-law being not hired by the district and only being used as a substitute. So he ordered the superintendent to offer a job to his sister-in-law, which the superintendent did. So I think that that's kind of, you know, people will go, hey, I've got a friend of mine who's interested in this post. And to me, I think that's kind of a conflict of interest to hope that a relative, to order a superintendent. And I'm surprised this much later to learn that the superintendent did in fact hire that person who was served in our district. But that seems a little blatant to me. So I don't know if that's the kind of thing that they're talking about. Obviously, there are other issues where you abstain from voting on certain things, but to make that type of a demand, I think is, and it's been, I've not seen that of late, but I mean, those types of things do happen.
Your current superintendent would have an issue with that, by the way.
Well, the other part is that he also used his job with regard to numerous bids and things. So that was a little dicey too, that contacting people, you know, when things are supposed to be confidential and closed hearing, and then that information gets out and friends find out about jobs and bids and that type of thing. So we're talking a little bit a while back, but those kinds of things quite obviously do happen. So anything there for anyone else? Okay. And then we have conduct with a code of ethics. Now, would that be part of a new board member packet? I think that might be kind of, or maybe not a board member, but something that we reaffirm, because I know that we used to do that type of thing in past retreats as well. That it was there in paper that this is what we're hired to do, or what we're elected to do, excuse me. And I think it provides some clarity for some people. And it's always good a reminder.
Those are all part of that new board member orientation class at
Right.
MASB too. If we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
convince people to take those classes, those are very helpful.
Yep. Okay. The next page is the board member will not, and here's where maybe that part earlier I had tagged represent the board's personal opinions as those of the board. Sometimes that's really, people see you nodding and you're just listening and people think, oh, all of a sudden that you agree with what they're talking about, when in fact you're just being civil and listening to what they have to say. So that's not a bad reminder as well.
Marianne, where specifically are you in the policies?
The next page after what we talked about, which was the board code of ethics. The next page, and it indicates B, a board member will not. It's kind of what they will
So
do.
what's the number? What's the number?
Number 1.
No. What's the number?
2302,
Okay.
Yep, sorry
Right.
about that.
subsection B.
Okay, sorry. I had gotten ahead of that, and that's why I was confused. Go ahead, thanks.
Yep, so that was kind of where we had the earlier discussion, just in terms of, I think a chain of command is key in any organization that needs to be followed. So. Anything else there? Next we have 2303, which is violation of Board of Code ethics. And there was one under B.
So this question is, who can initiate an investigation when a board member violates the code of ethics? Is it just the president, or is it the board through a majority vote?
Seems like it should be just the president.
I guess my question is, what if the violation is tied to the president?
The next thing says then it's the vice
And
president.
it's the vice president? Okay, yes.
Or the thing, the very number A1, the president or vice president, the president is the focus of the inquiry.
I'm good with it just being the president.
Yeah.
Okay.
By having it that way, the only way you can have a affirmative vote of the majority of the members is to notice it on the agenda, have a discussion, etc. And if there indeed is not an ethical violation, it'd be very hard on that board member to have that out there if it's a much to do about nothing.
Yeah, you have a quorum, and so then what?
Yeah.
So if the president investigates and then finds there's something, that's when it can be referred for board action.
Yeah.
That makes way more sense to me.
Yep. Okay. Okay. 2304, gifting. Gifts to the board. As long as it's chocolate, I mean, I don't see a real.
Amen.
Just kidding.
Well, we need to contact Fred and say there needs to be an exception for chocolate.
Chocolate. Or a payday candy bar. All right. 2305, board member reimbursement and travel expenses. We've got reimbursement, establish categories of what those might be for different conferences and things. Travel by privately owned vehicle may be reimbursed. Now, the only thing that I will bring up is a long time ago, which I thought was really interesting. The MASB had a conference And the conference was the same conference in two places. And one was in Frankenmuth and the other one was in Mission Point. So several board members, I was the only one who went to Frankenmuth.
I wasn't on the board at
She wasn't on the board, and everybody else, they went to Mission Point, took families, and felt that that was their just reward for all of the time and the effort that they put in. And so I think that's something to consider when if we have to get to a point where we look at reductions and those kinds of things. I mean, if you can get the class online, or if you can get the class in Frankenmuth, quite honestly, I never knew even then, because this was quite a while ago, that I could turn in reimbursement for gas. I never have. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So I'm thinking, you know, it's not vacation time, but think about that, because that's where they always thought that would be a bigger draw, the Traverse Cities, the Boynes, that kind of thing. So I don't know whether they do that as much anymore, offer the same thing in a couple different locations. I think they streamlined that on their own, but I think that's something that we should consider. There was at one point, it was really kind of neat. They were having everything local for the CBA classes, and I went to Bay City a couple times, and I thought that, you know, I think we need to be mindful if people are going to be losing jobs or whatever, you know, how important is our travel and that kind of thing. But
yeah, I mean, the policies are ongoing.
Right.
Not for just now. I'm confused by that statement where it says so when it says travel by privately owned vehicle may be reimbursed. How do you guys understand that?
That if you used your car, you could get money.
So if somebody
55 cents a mile, or whatever the IRS reimbursement rate.
Yep.
So if somebody goes, and then this hasn't happened recently, but I know it used to happen. If somebody goes to the National School Boards Association meeting and they fly, does this prevent them from being reimbursed for that?
I mean, for their flight?
The district would pay for that under, excuse me, there would be, I think in years past, there's been a category for the Board of Education and travel conferences. So the district would pay for your flight and your hotel.
So the district would pay for it rather than reimbursing. So that's one of my, it just is unclear, because it's, instead of saying travel can be reimbursed, it's saying that, you know, only, and then the other question that comes up, and I know this was a big issue for Dr. Littles, and it's not a big issue for me, but it can frequently be cheaper to rent a car, drive the car over, and come back than it is for the district to pay the per mileage rate for somebody to go. And this seems to not, it seems to only enable reimbursement for travel by privately owned vehicle, which seems like an unnecessary restriction.
But that only applies for travel within district boundaries.
No, that's the next thing. So A just says travel by, instead of saying travel can be reimbursed, it says travel by privately owned vehicles can be reimbursed. So it seems, you know, it doesn't clearly say that other types of travel can't be reimbursed, but it doesn't clearly say, it just seems, it's unclear. The way it's written seems to create confusion in my mind, because it points out one specific thing rather than, so anyway, that's just my observation. I wondered if it created confusion for anybody else.
And the next one indicates for travel within district boundaries, the board will not expend district funds for.
Yeah, it's just saying, we don't get paid to drive to school board meetings. That's straightforward.
Or won't pay for a rental car to go to Frankenmuth for an MASB meeting.
Right, or using my own car.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Well,
with the district policy, I'm wrong about that. No.
Yeah.
That wouldn't apply, but
Yeah. 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 I mean, in our district is quite small, so it seems pretty trivial to us. In some of these large districts, people might encounter quite a bit of travel within the district. Anyway, I don't want to get hung up on that. I would say I would not include the restriction because I don't think it means anything about we'll carpool when practical. It's just like that should be up to board members. And essentially that's what that says. So I don't see any reason to put it in there.
Okay. The next item is about eating. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure what types of, where are we going to eat lunch, dinner, and that type of thing. So I'm trying, I don't recall ever.
Well, maybe Mary wants to chime in here. The standard practice has been that there is a standard meal rate, I think, that comes from the government, and you don't really turn in receipts for meals, you just get the standard meal rate. But maybe Mary wants to chime in on that.
Right. Board members have always fallen under the exact same that all employees do with the business procedures. So any meals that are reimbursable have to be put on the conference request form. It all has to be pre-approved, the amounts, what it is, and yes, then you're reimbursed after the fact, the same as an employee would be.
So it would
And
be
maybe
focused only on like conferences, because I can't think of where, or would they be talking, for example, the breakfast that they have at Horizons for the Chamber of Commerce? Is that the kind of thing that they're talking about?
no, this is
I'm not
for
clear.
conferences. This is for conferences.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but this is a question for Troon. Is it just seems like since our policy and practice is that board members follow the business procedures like all other employees, it just ought to say that in here rather than something else. And then this is automatically updated by those every time those business procedures are updated. So
I think that's a good idea. All right, anything else?
I mean,
Well,
I've got a couple of comments on the policy in general.
Like beverages and then breakfast, lunch. Okay,
You're cutting out, Mary or Janine. At least for me, you're cutting out. Maybe it's
No,
my
same
problem.
thing. Try again.
no, I just indicated anything else with the, yep, the next,
I
the
thought
next
David
section.
was going to.
David,
Yeah,
David, you froze, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So just in general, we as a board approve a budget every year. And as part of that budget, there is a line item in there for board expenses. And,
Right.
and within that line item would be conference expenses, that sort of thing. I don't like this entire policy because almost every provision says the board by majority vote of its members. That's in A1 and A2 and B1. It's in 3A. I don't particularly want to waste time at a board meeting having to specifically approve every expenditure for every conference meal and everything. If the board in its budget for the year, for the district's budget, approved a line item and these expenses fall within the budget, that to me is enough. I don't know why the board would have to specifically approve every expenditure.
Can you envision a time where somebody on the board might be draining the entire account and other people are not able to do anything because they go in December to apply for a conference and the fund is empty because the new board member's been taking all these classes and reimbursements, and I don't know, I'm just throwing that out. Is there a way to?
I think it's absolutely possible. I mean, you got to put these policies together to cover every extreme situation, even if you can't imagine it applying to the current board. But in the future, who knows? But I think at that point, I think it's up to the administration to say to the board president, hey, just so you're aware this is going on, and then, letting the board president, manage the board. I just think I don't think it's a good use of time. If the intent was that every rental car, meal, mileage reimbursement, hotel room has to be specifically approved by the board at a meeting, I think that's a huge waste of time.
Well, my question is, do we automatically do that every time we're approving the financial report and it happens to include one of those things?
That's what I was thinking too.
Mike, that's a good question.
Yes, and actually it's been past practice with the board that you guys can't receive your reimbursement check. Like I bring them to the board meetings, but you can't get your check until the end of the meeting after the board has approved it.
So the majority vote of members can be done through the treasurer's report. So it'll take no additional time.
Yes, that's how we've done it in the past. Yes.
Okay.
Well, just to let you know that this would not be something that happened in the future. I've worked with several board members who went to every single conference that they could. We never heard back on anything about how it, helped the district, but they went because number one, Sidney Poitier was one of the guest speakers. So we paid thousands for somebody to go to California and all over the place. We had one board member who used district travel, school board travel, because it helped him at his job at Saginaw Valley. So, you talk about somebody, Bruce, gobbling up all of the money. That has happened, and it has happened in the recent past. So I think that's important. Because those dollars they should be divvied up equally. And if people can't go, then perhaps others. But I think that would be something that we might want to take a look at.
So fast forward then, and there's a new board member that comes on that starts to do that. How do we, based on this policy, do we have to then vote no to that budget for that, for that week or for that time frame, for that to be addressed, or how would that be addressed based on this policy?
Well, I think you would either approve the treasurer's report except for a certain piece of that, and that piece to be withdrawn, and that piece would be denied, or you would approve that after the fact and then immediately start a conversation about how we're going to handle this moving forward in the future.
Seems I think like it's also helpful to know how much is that amount for everybody to say if it's a $15,000 line item, as an example. You've got 7 people on the board, and no, you won't be able to go to every single conference, and then some people perhaps might not be able to attend, because I think you want people to be able to go to these sessions and meetings, but I think there needs to be a little bit of a balance here, and maybe knowing up front how much money is actually in that budget would be pretty helpful.
Yeah, I think that, ultimately this is just a hammer at the end of, some coaching and interventions by the president, if somebody is starting to get out of bounds.
Agreed.
Okay, so I think.
Can we walk through what changes how we've agreed? I'm a little unsure what we've all agreed on.
So sounds like we've deleted B2A about the carpooling.
Okay.
Unless I hear otherwise.
Right.
Do we want to include specific numbers, dollar amounts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or do we want to include a statement about following the district's business procedures manual that we put out every year?
I clearly think we should include the goal here is to try to make as few of changes as we can in our policies, unless there's a compelling reason to do it. So, and I think that something that indicates that our practice is to follow that business procedures manual, and that way it's automatically being updated along with what's happening for everybody else. Seems like a good way to do it. The question is that, just would Troon have any objections to that? I can't imagine they would.
Michael, I'm sorry, we just lost you until the very end there.
Well, I just,
Everybody was frozen.
I think my sense was people thought referring to the business procedures manual
Yeah.
was a good way to do it.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay,
So that would probably then go with the alcoholic beverages and then lodging as well.
Now, just, this is from all my days of being a sales rep. We always had limits though. So I guess I'm a little confused on how board members will know what those limits actually are. I mean, if they're in our business.
Because every time you go to a conference, Mary informs you
Fill that out, right?
beforehand what your limits are.
Okay.
Right, you guys also receive a copy of the business procedures manual every January when it's updated. And all of those figures are in that.
Thank you. I haven't gone in a couple years with state conference, I think.
Okay. Is everybody set there? The last one is there's no change with the use of district credit and debit. And then the last one is board member compensation.
Yeah, and I assume we're going to adapt that policy.
I think we should.
Okay. Information on the board member elections. Anybody wants to comment there?
Who is the district's election coordinator?
Mary Dorr.
Congratulations.
She's putting that on her resume too.
Yep. Board membership and duties, acceptance of office and oath of office, and then appointed board members. Anything there for anyone? And then the terms.
So we consist of 4 offices. Well, are we talking about officials?
No. That's the number of
Yeah,
offices.
Seven.
seven board members for 6-year terms.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I talked to a couple of suits that have 5-person boards and a few that have 9. So
Wow.
that would, I'm fine with our 7.
Yeah, I think 7's a good compromise.
All right, the next would be membership and duties, looking at vacancies and appointments. And the process to be followed there, which pretty standard. And then we have membership and duties, 3405 board officers. Did you want to comment on any of those, Bruce, or there's just a couple things there?
Sorry, I was catching up on my notes. 24.
We're on 2405.
Yep.
There were 2 items highlighted there.
There is an option, according to Troon, there's an option in Michigan that the treasurer of the district does not have to be a board member. You can have a separate treasurer. No, that's not something that I think Saginaw Township has ever done, have they? So
No.
It's an intriguing possibility, but it's not something that.
My recommendation would be to go with number 1 as we have been.
Yeah. Okay. And if the board does not elect a treasurer, the president must appoint a board member. And that says an option or a non-board member. I think they're elected.
All of these, sorry.
They're all elected positions, so I don't know why we would appoint someone who hasn't gone through that process.
I think all of these options are a result of the first choice. If you don't have the non-board member treasurer.
Yeah, once we've determined that the treasurer is a board member, everything else just follows through.
Yep. And then the last one was under D3, so pretty lengthy.
That would be option 1 to be consistent.
Okay. All right, and then we have board officers' duties, which are pretty self-explanatory over the next couple pages. And then we move to the 2501, which is the Open Meetings Act. And board members' absence, not due to military duty. Bruce? This indicates they can't vote
Well,
if they were not present for the discussion.
well, this is the choice that we have to make, is whether we are going to allow that or not, right?
Correct.
Abiding by that, have a
I mean, I'm in favor of enabling people that can't physically be at the board meeting to participate remotely, if we can enable it.
My only worry is having the technology set up so that the absent board members and the public may interact. Given our sometime troubles at Arrowwood, even getting a presentation to operate correctly, I would worry about whether or not the interactions could be set up so that we're following the rule. I agree with you that if it's possible, we ought to do it. I worry about the technology not being there and it really causing some trouble.
I know that in a neighboring district, there was a board member who traveled and was never in attendance physically, rarely in attendance physically, and that became a real problem personally for the people who were there, that this individual wasn't part of the physical atmosphere. And so it really caused some hard feelings. So I don't know whether, and how, if you say you're going to do it one time, you do it 7 times. You know what I mean?
Consistent with your decision.
Yeah.
My inclination is this is important enough that we ought to refer it to the whole board to discuss.
Okay.
See, and that, Mike, I don't have a problem with that. My only concern, and I was going to raise it and hoping we could revisit quickly the appearances by student groups. If we have too long a list of things that we've left open, it's going to make a really hard discussion to get these adopted, because you're going to have to, in a perfect world, no world's perfect, we could reach an agreement on all the proposals. And if someone then, any of the other board members have an issue, they could raise them. But I'd like to try to keep the number of issues that remain open limited. Otherwise, it's going to be very unwieldy to get these adopted in August.
No, agreed. And you reminded me, I don't think I ever actually read your thing, so I'm going to see if I can quickly find that one. The revised one you had on the other one.
And we can raise it at the next meeting. It doesn't have to be tonight. It's fine.
Yeah.
So at our next meeting, we want to come back to this then, as to the absence, and then as to those groups, have that discussion with just the 4 of us, or with the whole board?
Well, I don't.
Go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, I don't know if Jim wants to comment on this, if he's paying attention about the technical feasibility of it.
I believe he stepped away and he asked me to text him when we're done so he can shut everything down.
Well, let's just table it for right now. We have a couple more.
Yeah, that's fine.
We have some time.
But Bruce, would you have a conversation with Jim about the technological feasibility of being able to pull this off?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, of course, that would just be if a board member wanted to engage in it, not correct?
May.
Correct.
Yeah, it's permissive.
May.
Yeah. So Tony Duncan's in San Francisco on a Monday night. Are we going to allow him to participate through Zoom or phone or whatever and vote and give opinions, or is he out of bounds no matter what because he's not physically present?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Weedsport, New York right now.
Whoa.
Okay. Turning the page then. Last one that has a notation is open session board meeting minutes may be published on the district's website. Bruce, if you want to maybe conduct it.
No, I think the question is simply whether we want to use Robert's Rules of Order or another procedural tool.
I think Robert's Rules of Order is fine.
Okay.
And then we go to the agenda item under 2502. Meeting agendas will be prepared by the superintendent or designee in coordination with the president or designee.
I think we should include that optional language just for flexibility.
Well, include the recommended language. The optional says, or something else that we want. But are you saying that you have the language that they recommend sounds good to me? Is that?
Yeah. And omit the optional.
I agree with you. The language that they have is fine.
Yeah.
But literally, if you wanted to say agendas will be prepared by the superintendent or designee in conjunction or in coordination with the president or designee, or other procedures determined by the board, that gives you your suggested procedure, but then also gives you more flexibility if you need it.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I didn't understand it that way. Yeah. Just adding that or other procedure determined by the board. I thought they were, yeah, I'm fine with what you're saying is including that optional language. Got it.
Okay. All right, next would be voting requirements under Board Meetings and Open Meetings Act. And then public participation at board meetings. We've always had 3 minutes.
Yep.
And I think that that's fine.
Yep.
Now, one question I have is, and I believe that we've always had it this way, that if you wanted to address the board, you needed to live in Saginaw Township and be a member. So I don't know whether we want to continue with that but you always had to give your, because people would ask, well, why is somebody from, Okemos speaking at our board meeting? And I think if you want to keep, our board meetings could become theoretically, very, very long if we have people from all over. But that's always the way that it's been, is that they pretty much have had to live in the area. Where it gets a little bit different, what might be, for example, schools of choice. They might obviously.
I like the idea of adding a provision that says in order to speak to the board, you must be a resident of the township. But I think Bruce needs to run that by Troon, because I'm not sure under the First Amendment that limitation is allowed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not. Say somebody's a recent graduate, but they don't live in the township anymore.
And they start right off in the opening line, any member of the public may address the board.
Yeah, so I can think of 2 specific situations when I was president that people were not residents in Saginaw Township.
Yep, and that's what I'm.
So I don't think it's been our practice to preclude them from speaking. They just have to state where their name and address is.
And that means too that you also have to stick with that limit. And I've been at board meetings where, we've let somebody else continue to talk. So, you can run into an issue if you let someone talk for 10 minutes and then somebody else, when you say the policy's 3. So you really need to stick with 3. And in years past, we had a couple of really what I would call controversial topics. And we'd have 200 people at a meeting, and we went row by row. And it was a point where people wanted to continue to talk again. And what we did was we went row by row. You had your 3 minutes, and then anybody who wanted to speak had a chance to speak. And then if you wanted to address the board again, everybody else had to have their turn. So this is when truly board meetings went to 11 and 12 o'clock at night. And I think that's why it's important to not, in the moment, everybody might think, oh, well, let this person continue. And I think you need to stick to the 3 minutes.
So Troon recommends any time between 3 to 5 minutes. So we're okay with 3 to continue our current practice?
Yep. I think so.
Okay.
All right, and then we have the board committees. And then the organizational meeting, which you want to highlight that, Bruce, what you have there as an option? This meeting.
We do our official organizational meeting in January, correct?
Well,
Or is that
It used to be July.
yeah,
Because of the election a couple years ago, we split it, and we do the organizational in July as far as like the attorney and the auditing firm and those things. But in January, we do the officers because that's when the new board members take office.
so Mary, what would prevent us from doing everything in January? Is it like hiring the auditing firm? Or could we do that in January?
I suppose you could. They don't audit obviously the calendar year, they audit the school year, but I suppose you could.
They don't really
appoint
start
them.
working. They don't really start working until after January 1st.
Right. And that would be the same thing then with the attorney. You'd be appointing them in January to start in July, basically, but there's no reason you couldn't do that.
Well, yeah. Okay. You're saying, because I mean, the districts that must do this, it just seems simpler to do it all, to have one organizational meeting rather than 2, but maybe it's not that big a deal.
And we used to do everything in July, but then switched the officers to January when we switched the elections.
Yeah, and that pretty much has to be in January. So that's
right.
I don't know.
It would seem a little odd to name those people in January, I would think. I think having them on board July 1, the start of the actual school year, makes a little bit more sense.
The auditors and
lawyers.
In my previous 4 districts, 2 did the calendar and 2 did the fiscal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and like you say that, but it would be much easier to like go, instead of going through a review of lawyers over the summer, it would be much easier to be doing that in the fall, going into a January 1st decision, or so, trying to be prepared for that January 1st or early July organizational meeting, which is, you're ending the previous school year. It seems like we often get caught with not sufficient time, whereas at the January 1st meeting, you would have all the, the fall to do any reviews you wanted to do in preparation for that. So
what I'm hearing people say is we want to maintain sort of the best of both worlds. We want to do some of it in July and some of it in January. So what I think that means, Bruce, is that you just have to modify the language here to, indicate what we're doing when.
to continue our current practice.
Right.
Okay.
So Bruce, you seem to think it would work to do everything in January. You indicated it would work in other districts. It's worked that way.
Yes, it has. Yeah, we would have a transition year at some point, because when you sign those attorney and auditor contracts for a year, you would essentially be either extending them January 1st for a full year, or you would be breaking them midpoint which seems like the attorney and auditor would have a problem with.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that.
We'd have to transition for a year to get on a January calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, presumably we're not going to change our legal representation anytime soon after we've.
I would hope not, but.
I like our current practice myself.
Okay. It's not that big a deal. I just thought it would be simpler to
Yeah,
go to-
I second that motion.
making it simpler motion.
No, second Mary Ann's to keep it current.
Okay. All right. If you're good with keeping it current, that's fine. It will be more complicated to change it. So making it more complicated to make it simpler doesn't really make all that much sense.
So I think, Bruce, the easiest thing to do is to work with Mary and say, at the board's first regular meeting of each fiscal year, X, Y, and Z will be done. And at the board first meeting of every calendar year, these things will be done.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the name of the section is organizational meetings. So it works.
True. That leads one to believe there are plural meetings.
Okay, then on the last is, oh, that isn't me. Sorry.
That's it.
We're done.
No, that's Janine, who is going to lead us through the third section on July 13th. And I had insomnia a couple nights ago, so I read ahead a little bit. And I can tell you that when you get about 2/3 of the way through section 3, you're going to hit a level of despair because it is incredibly detail oriented, incredibly fine points. But then you'll realize the last 20 pages all have to do with the federal and state Freedom of Information Act, and it's all form language. And you'll rejoice as you cruise through the last 20 pages. It'll take forever, but it won't. So hang in there.
What date do you have for that?
July 13th.
July 13th.
And I met with that team last Thursday. We spent about 3 hours going through all those, highlighting all of our recommendations we're going to make to you. So most of the folks involved with that are either on vacation or heading on vacation for a little bit of a getaway. So I wanted to get them together early so we weren't scrambling when everybody got back.
You mean for the Freedom of Act piece? Is that what you're referencing?
No, the whole 3,000 section.
Oh, the whole 3,000. Okay.
And David, you are correct. It is quite tedious.
But rejoice, the end goes quickly.
Good.
On July 13th, I just ask everybody to take a look at my email from June 24th with some proposed language on the student group appearances. And let's talk about it on the 13th and see if that new language would allow everybody to be on the same page.
Okay. Now, we're still probably going to be remote at that point, correct, Bruce?
I don't have any idea. I believe our current situation expires tomorrow, does it not? And then so she's going to need to make some announcements tomorrow, whether she's extending the current situation or relaxing the standards down. So
I thought she had gone to July 16th.
that was for the state of emergency declaration that allows her to apply for federal funds.
All right.
That state of emergency is different than the stay-at-home order. So
Okie doke.
yeah.
I would be inclined to think she'll keep it intact given what's happening around the country.
Yeah, I was thinking she was moving towards relaxing them because everything had indicated that she was publicizing. But now that we're seeing the spikes in the states that have relaxed it, I wouldn't be at all surprised if she continues this for a bit longer. But we'll find out tomorrow, I guess. As well as finding out what our per pupil cut is for this year, evidently.
Yeah, you thought after tonight you could take a break for the holiday, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah,
so from a formal standpoint, do we need to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Public comment?
We do have to take public comment. Thank you. Let me check. And The public remains quiet, so no public comments submitted.
Okay,
So I think we can formally adjourn without a motion.
okay. Thank you, folks.
Yep. Have a good holiday,
Have a good
everyone.
holiday, guys.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. See you in a couple weeks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.